Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And in today's range report, we're going to be taking a look at a really interesting SIG pistol. In fact, this is a model that I had never heard of before, and maybe some of you haven't either. The pistol that we will be taking to the range, shooting and reviewing is the P245. Now, obviously from the name, you can tell this will be chambered in 45 ACP. It is a single stack, compact P-Series pistol. And some people are going to ask, isn't that pretty much the same specs as the P220 carry or compact? And yes, you would be correct. However, this is kind of a precursor to that pistol. Externally, there are a few differences if you look at them side by side, and internally, there is a different locking geometry, and not all parts are compatible between the two. But externally, you will notice that this particular pistol uses the old style of manufacturing where this is a stamped sheet metal slide, where most of the modern pistols are made of bar stock steel. So this pistol was made during a time that some people call the golden age of single stack semi-automatic pistols. And this time is easily defined in the United States as 1994 to 2004, because during that time we had an assault weapons ban. And one of the things this law did was limit the capacity of all firearms to 10 rounds or less. So firearms manufacturers were trying to put as much punch in the smallest guns possible, and they were trying to cater to a new gun buyer, people that were getting into the concealed carry market, because during this time we also had an explosion of state laws where concealed carry was becoming legal and more accepted. This particular pistol was also marketed to law enforcement agencies as a backup gun. It was not marketed as their primary, but because it could be carried easily and it was smaller, they wanted to also get a little bit of that market, especially people that love 1911s and 45 ACP pistols, but might want something in a more modern design. So this gun is kind of interesting, and I also understand why some people think it is obsolete. Now, it's important to realize that when I use that word, I often offend people. It doesn't mean that this gun is not effective. It just means that the original philosophy of this gun might be a little bit outdated based off of today's laws and what modern gun buyers are looking for. But it could still be a great pistol that is well manufactured, and we're just going to have to take this to the range and find out. But before we take this to the range and talk about all the things that I like and don't like, as always, I want to thank the people that make these videos possible. First and foremost is the owner of this very cool and collectible SIG pistol. He's a local fan and subscriber. His name is Julian, and he lent this to the channel for me to review, so thank you so much, Julian. I always want to thank my Patreon supporters, because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here, and I could not do this without their support. And if you guys want to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, you get to see all these videos early, and there's a link in the description below. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor who provides all of the ammunition for these range reports and makes them financially feasible for me, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And here we are once again reviewing another fine firearm made of steel, not polymer, a gun that takes grips that you can change out. And you probably have quite a few of these in your own collection. Maybe you have a Colt 1911, a Browning High Power, a CZ75, or a Beretta 92, just to name a few. And you might be in the market for a set of wood panel grips to make your gun unique and one of a kind, and something that's tailored to you. Well, I have the perfect grip company, Brownworks. Brownworks is a custom grip company, making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. Mark, the owner, is a craftsman. He can apply custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures, finish these grips in a wide variety of colors. He creates his own laminate woods and can even apply exotic materials like snake skin and alligator skin to these grips to make them unique and one of a kind. Every set of grips he makes is a one-off set, made to order. So if you're looking for the best grips in the world, go check out Brownworks. I'm going to put a link to his website in the comment section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. And when you place your order for your first set of custom grips, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so once again, let's talk about what the pistol is that we have on the workbench. The Sig Sauer P245. It is a P-Series pistol, so it is double action, single action with the decocker, chambered in 45 ACP. It has a single stack magazine that holds 6 rounds. It is 7.5 inches long. It is 1.75 inches wide. And the barrel is 3.9 inches and has 6 grooves with a 1 16 right hand twist. And I was able to find all of that information from a SIG collector's forum because I didn't know much about this pistol, and I really appreciate people documenting all of that information. I should also mention this pistol weighs 26 ounces. So let's talk about the things that I like and don't like. And the first thing I love about this pistol is that it is a SIG P-Series pistol. Now, there's something about these guns that I think is just robust and durable. They've been around since the 1970s, so it's not like they are necessarily a new design, but they are a proven design. I think they look absolutely fantastic, but variations of these guns had been used by the United States Navy SEALs, police departments around the world, militaries around the world. They are just a proven design. They might not be the perfect pistol for you, but there's no doubt that this is a quality and durable, well-built gun. And so just starting off the review talking about that, I think is really important, because even though some people might not like the caliber or the fact that it's single stack, you have to admit that at the heart of this gun is something quality. And speaking of that quality, I also want to mention once again that this slide is made of that stamped sheet metal process. A lot of people think these are the best SIG pistols. It's kind of interesting to look at how they made these, because most people don't think of stamped sheet metal when it comes to a semi-automatic pistol. But it is quite interesting, and you can always tell one that is made of stamped sheet metal because it will have this little flat surface right here that is machined into the top. And you'll also notice that we have a little block right here, and you can see that it holds in the firing pin, and that is different than many of the modern SIGs. So if you have a SIG that has this little block right here and that flat surface, you know you have one of the old German-made ones that are made of stamped sheet metal. I also really like the fact that this gun for a compact pistol is just the right size. It's not too small, but not too big. It might be too big for some people, but often when it comes to a 45 caliber pistol that is really small and single stack, they're too narrow for me and they're not very comfortable to shoot. But this one is a very, very nice size. And of course, this gun is double action, single action, and I do like that with the decocker. I think this is the perfect way to have a gun set up to carry. Now let's talk about one thing about this gun that I don't like, and that's going to be, of course, the capacity. And that's what really dates this pistol. In today's world, we really want to have pistols that have more capacity. But as I said, during the time this gun was made, 6 rounds of 45 ACP was pretty darn good. You couldn't ask for much more in a gun of this size. But in today's world, I really feel that is a little bit anemic. But now, before we go to the range, there's one thing I want to talk about this pistol that I'm kind of neutral on, and that's going to be this trigger. Now, this gun was made before SIG came out with what they call the SRT, or the short reset trigger, which honestly I think makes these P-Series guns so much better. But this is the old style. The resets are a little bit long, the double action take-up is a little bit heavy, but they do work and you can get used to them. So I want to adjust the camera, get out the Lyman trigger pull weight gauge, and show you what this trigger is all about. So let's get some close-ups of this trigger in this P245. Of course, we'll start by dropping the magazine, ensuring there is no ammunition in it, and of course, safety checking the firearm, ensuring there is no ammunition in the chamber. It looks like we are good. Let's start off by looking at the double action pull. This is going to be long and heavy, but overall it's pretty smooth. It's not as heavy as other double action triggers I have reviewed in the recent past, but it is still pretty stout. On the single action side, we have a little bit of take up here. We come back to a definitive wall. It breaks pretty crisp, and the reset, little bit long with quite a bit of take up, and that's where the modern SRT triggers are a little bit nicer. So let's get out the Lyman trigger pull weight gauge, let's clear the averages out, and let's test this trigger. We'll start off with double action first, and for our first pull we have 8 pounds 8.9 ounces. 8 pounds, 8.4 ounces. 8 pounds, 12.2 ounces. 8 pounds, 9.4 ounces. And finally, we have 8 pounds, 7.9 ounces, which gives us an average of 8 pounds, 9.4 ounces. Not the lightest double action trigger ever, but definitely not the heaviest. That is pretty good, especially for a SIG pistol of this vintage. But now let's test this pistol in single action. So let me once again clear the averages out, and let's now measure it and see what we get. Our first pull. 4 pounds, 5.3 ounces. 4 pounds, 6.6 ounces. 4 pounds, 3.4 ounces. 4 pounds, 2.6 ounces. And finally, we have 4 pounds, 3.3 ounces, which gives us an average of 4 pounds, 4.2 ounces. That's actually a pretty darn good single action pull for this pistol. So now you pretty much know everything about this pistol that I know and what I learned from my research. So now let's just take this to the range and see how it shoots. So because of the small capacity and the fact I only have 2 magazines for this review, we're going to shoot 2 magazines of 6 rounds of 45 ACP through it to get my first impression. So as always, I'll set out the target at 7 yards. Just fire these rounds down range, see if there's anything about this gun that I discover that I like or don't like, and I'll report back to you. So let's go to the range. And overall, this gun shoots exactly as I was expecting it would. It was a pretty good group, good for self-defense. Now, for me, this gun is not going to be a tack driver. I typically don't shoot small 45 ACP guns like this all that well, but I am happy with that group. And before I shot this pistol, I did have to remind myself that most SIGs use something called the combat sights, which essentially means when it comes to the front dot, you have to hold it above the rear notch, not necessarily in the notch, because it will shoot low otherwise. Now, this gun is a little bit on the flippy or the snappy size. It is a smaller gun, so it's lighter, chambered in 45 ACP, but also all of these SIG P-Series pistols have a relatively high bore axis. So it's not going to be as comfortable to shoot as, let's say, a 1911 that would be this size. I feel like a 1911 is just a little bit more ergonomic than this gun is. All right, so now let's double the distance of this target, put 2 more magazines downrange, see what happens to this group, see if there's anything else, once again, that I discover about this gun that I like or don't like, and I'll report back to you. So let's go back to the range and see if I continue to shoot this gun pretty well. And this gun is shooting very consistent for me. Pretty much I would have exactly the same comments that I did in the first segment. Nothing really has changed, with the exception of this group at double the distance is pretty much the same size. So I'm actually shooting it better at a further distance. And once again, it is a good backup gun or range gun accuracy for me. I don't expect this gun to be a tack driver, but for a small 45 ACP, it's shooting pretty darn good. All right, so now let's take the target out to 25 yards. I'm going to shoot this from the barrier or a bench and essentially see if I take as much of the human element out of the equation as possible, what the best group I can get with it is. So let's go back to the range, 2 more magazines at 25 yards. And this pistol is giving me better accuracy than what I was expecting before going to the range. And it really seems like the further I put the target out, the better the group is. Even though the group is the same size, you have to take into consideration the target is further away. So I am really impressed with it. I also have to say I like these types of iron sights that I think are more militaristic than civilian, and you'll notice that we do have just a white dot on the bottom of the notch and a single dot in the front. You would see that on other US military pistols. A lot of people like the 2 dots in the back, but I like this system personally. They seem to work well for me. So overall, this gun is exceeding my expectations for what it is. All right, so the next test I want to do is the double action test. I showed you what it measured at here on the workbench, but now let's actually put this into practice. Many times when it comes to a SIG pistol in double action, I actually shoot them pretty well because it forces me to take my time and really stage that trigger. But let's go back to the range and see if I go through 2 magazines with this gun, all in double action, how well I can shoot it. And this pistol is performing like all of the other P-Series pistols from SIG I have reviewed in double action. It has a long and heavy pull, but it is smooth, and I'm able to get a pretty good group. I think this is an important thing to train on and an important test to conduct, because if you have to pull your gun in self-defense with a pistol like this, your first shot will be in double action because you're supposed to carry this with one in the chamber with the hammer down after you have safely decocked it. And you don't want to pull that first shot because in any self-defense shooting, you are accountable for every round that comes out of this gun, and you want to make sure you're not going to pull that shot and hit something you don't intend to. You also might have to utilize this gun's capability of double strike. Essentially, if you pull the trigger and it doesn't go bang, well, maybe you had a light primer strike. Because this is a double action pistol as well, you will pull that trigger back and hopefully that hammer will fall on that firing pin and now the round will go off. It might not, but it's nice to have that option. And once again, you want to make sure you're not going to pull that shot. But overall, it's performing well for me, and I really feel like I shoot these SIGs in double action really well. So the next test I want to do, speaking of a self-defense scenario, is put some hollow points through it. Sometimes these European pistols don't feed hollow points very well. And there's a wide variety of 45 ACP hollow points. Some feed better than others. So let's go back to the range. Let's put a couple of magazines of hollow points through this just to make sure they function and they run reliably. And as expected, this gun ran flawlessly, no issues whatsoever, and it has been 100% reliable. The only thing that I can tell that is different between shooting this gun with ball ammunition and hollow points is my grouping with hollow points is a little bit better, but also the hollow points are not ripping the paper target. Sometimes I notice with 45 ACP, I'll get tears, but with the hollow points, I don't get that. I don't think that's an issue with projectile stabilization. It's just something to note. And maybe if you're a ballistician, you can tell me why that is occurring. But it seems to run really well with hollow points, and honestly, I think it shoots better with them. So if I was going to carry this, own this, or use it at the range, I might prefer some type of hollow point ammunition. It just seems to run a little bit better. All right, so the next test I want to do is a 3-in-1 test. I want to, number one, see, can I shoot this gun fast? I want to know, can I change the magazine out quickly and get it back in action? I think that's really important because these magazines only hold 6 rounds, so you're probably going to want to carry a spare or two. I also want to see if I can overcome what you just saw. I've noticed that with both of these magazines, they kind of hang up as I reinsert it into the pistol, and I think it's catching on the mag catch internally. Maybe that's part of the design, or maybe it just has to deal with this particular example. But I want to know, is that going to trip me up at all? And I also want to know, is this gun point shootable? Because this is a backup gun or a concealed carry gun, if you had to pull this gun in self-defense, point it at a threat that you needed to stop, if you just had to pull the trigger because you don't have time to line up your sights, is the gun naturally pointing? So I want to find out all 3 of these things. So let's go back to the range, shoot this fast, and see what I find out. And for me, that test was very enlightening. So let's go ahead and break it down. Number 1, can I shoot this gun fast? Yeah, not as fast as I can other guns, especially SIGs with the SRT trigger in it, but overall, it wasn't too bad. Can I change these magazines out quickly? Well, I struggled with it just a little bit, and I showed you earlier in this range report that these magazines catch on that magazine release just a little bit, and it kind of slows you down. What I end up having to do is slam that magazine in there harder than what I would want to. I like it where I can just simply insert the magazine and it doesn't stop or catch on anything. I don't know if this is intrinsic to this design with the single stack magazines, or it's just this particular example that might have a burr on that magazine release. All I can do is show you what I personally experienced. And now let's talk about the accuracy. And you saw from that target, it looks like I shot it with a shotgun. I mentioned earlier as well, this gun is a little bit on the flippy side. We do have quite a bit of recoil for a 45 because of its size and the fact it has a high bore axis. And when I'm shooting this fast, just trying to point shoot it, it's really hard to get a good group. So if you're going to carry this gun, no, you're going to have to take your time and line up your shots, or if you're going to use this in competition, you're going to need to take your time. You're not going to be able to keep this gun on target as well as maybe other firearms that you have available. So what are my final thoughts on the SIG P245, a really interesting pistol that most people do not know about? Well, let's talk about the positive things first. Obviously, this is a well-built gun. It shoots good. It's reliable. I get decent accuracy with it. It's definitely what I would say is SIG quality. It would work well as a decent backup gun. It has good small gun accuracy for me. As I mentioned, normally I do not shoot guns that are built like this and that are this size that well at all, and it is reliable. So I have nothing really to complain about when it comes to this gun's function. Now let's talk about the couple of downsides to this gun. In my opinion, this gun is a little bit obsolete. Now remember, obsolescence does not mean the gun does not function. It just means that in today's firearms world, it might not have as much relevance. The capacity obviously is this gun's biggest fault. Only 6 rounds. Yeah, I really feel like in a modern world, and there we go with that magazine catching just a little bit, we would expect this gun to have a little bit more capacity. And of course, it has a high bore axis, thus making it a little bit more difficult to keep on target when you're shooting it fast. But overall, the gun works well. And I think in its time, this gun would have been a 5 out of 5-star review back in the late 90s. But in today's gun world, which is how I need to review it, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars. It's pretty good overall, good accuracy, it's well built, it's definitely cool and collectible, but the limited capacity is obviously its biggest downside. And of course, we have that magazine catch issue. I wish that could be resolved as well. But 4 out of 5 stars for a gun that seems to run well, is really honestly kind of fun to shoot, unlike other small 45s that I've shot in the past. It works well. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you own a P245? Have you ever heard of this model? And what do you think of it? So, as always, thanks for watching. Is with a round in the chamber, and of course you decock.